Mark 4:35, you'll see the verses on the screen. I'm going to jump right into the text, and then we'll back up and set it up a little bit. So Mark 4:35 says, "On that day, when evening had come, Jesus told them, 'Let us cross over to the other side of the sea.' So they left the crowd and took him along, since he was in the boat, and other boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking over the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. He was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. So they awoke him and said to him, 'Teacher, don't you care that we're going to die?' He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, 'Silence, be still.' And the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Then he said to them, 'Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?' And they were terrified and asked one another, 'Who then is this that even the wind and the sea obey him?'" All right, so as we jump into this all-important passage, there's one very profound thing that you have to know right from the beginning, and it's that Jesus takes naps. I bless you with that right now. I bless you with double portion napping in Jesus' name. Someone's got to hear this. This is a word from the Lord for your life today, okay? Be blessed with that. You know, before I had kids, I used to be a big nap guy. And I'm the kind of guy that I do not take 20-minute naps, because if I do, I wake up with a headache, I'm groggy, the rest of the day is trash. So I'm big on like a 2-3 hour nap. Let your body wake up naturally, okay? Now, this was before I had kids. And I remember when Kelly was pregnant, I began to think about how this would affect my daily nap routine. These are the big questions in fatherhood. So I asked a guy who had 4 kids. I said, "Listen, man, I need some advice here. When do you nap?" It's funny, you guys saw it before I did. He said, "I don't nap." And I began to have great fear in my life. Now, I've never been in a boat in a storm like this, but I do have a comparable story when I flipped a jet ski with my mom on it. You want to hear the story? So here we go. So this is a vacation. I don't know how old I was, maybe 16 or something. We're somewhere that had, those jet ski rentals. So, we all partner up. I think Danny was with my dad. I was with my mom. Were you with Mike? I forget. So we're out there on these jet skis, and I'd never ridden, however you word that, never driven a jet ski before. So we're on the water, I'm starting to get a feel for it. We start turning real fast, and I think, because they say that, your frontal lobe, which is like the voice that tells you not to do dangerous things, isn't developed till you're like 25, okay? So let's all cut me some slack here. I start turning as fast as I can, back and forth zigzag, to the point where me and my mother go flying off the jet ski. Now, thankfully, they have those pull cord things that kill the engine, right? So the jet ski didn't, ride off somewhere. But there were signs posted that said, "Watch out for manatees." Now, if you don't know what a manatee is, it is the teddy bear of the ocean. But we didn't know that. So I see in my mom's eyes pure fear and rage when she says, "Joey, there are manatees in the water." And then I saw that she was afraid, so I began to get afraid. Not because I was scared of manatees, but because I thought she was going to kill me and make it look like a jet ski accident. I thought I was dead. She was going to pop the inflatable tube around me. I was dead in the water. Dateline never would have found out. The news never would have known. There would have been zero investigation. I don't know what happened. The jet ski crashed in the water. I don't know where my son is. It would have been the end of it. It would have been the end. But by God's grace, we survived, okay? Now, it's hard for us to relate to being in a wooden boat on the sea. It's probably, not something like any of us have experienced. But if you've ever been in a plane with severe turbulence, you realize how worthless you are in that moment. Like, you could do nothing. You ever been in a car that's spinning out of control on ice or something? Like, you can't do anything. And so these disciples here, they're wildly freaking out. Jesus, my man's napping, so he's good. He ain't worried about it. They're freaking out. And I love this story so much because Jesus gets up. I don't know if he's just like, it's not fair to say he's cranky from his nap because he's Jesus, right? He's holy. But he just wakes up. He calms the storm like it's just another Tuesday. And he's like, why do you guys still not have any faith in me? And they're like, I don't know. We've never seen that happen before. And if you've heard these stories in church a few times, it's like, oh yes, then he multiplies the bread and fish. Then he raises Lazarus. Then he calms the storm. And you have to imagine for a minute, they're like, you're one of these guys in these boats. And we know that at least 4 of the 12 disciples were professional fishermen by trade. These guys weren't new to storms on the Sea of Galilee. But they find themselves in a storm. So if I could reread verse 37 to you here, it says, a great windstorm arose, and the wind and the waves were breaking over the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped, and he was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. Now, the thing about a story like this is that even if you've never been in a boat on the Sea of Galilee with waves crashing over the boat and the wind threatening to blow you overboard, you have probably at some point or another been in a storm in your life that was outside of your control. And the thing about the modern world is that thanks to our technology, thanks to our systems, thanks to our habits and our schedules, we like to feel like we have a decent grasp on our life, don't we? And the truth is, we never have control. What we have is an illusion of control. And all it takes is one storm that we can't do anything about to shatter our nice little illusion of having everything ordered in our lives. What do you do when a storm comes that you have no ability to do anything about? What do you do? What do you do when things happen in life that no matter what you're doing, no matter how hard you try, it is something that's beyond you. It is something that's beyond your capacity. That's what these guys were going through here. They're following Jesus. I mean, that's the best thing you can do with your life. They're trying to do the right things, follow the right guy, live the right way. In fact, Jesus said, we're going to the other side, and he didn't say anything about a storm. And so what's happening now is that we're finding ourselves in something that's so far beyond us. And what I want you to know today, if you walk away with anything, is that you would know that we have a God who has authority over the wind and the waves. That we have a God who's still in control, who still has authority, who still has leadership. He still saves, he still heals, and he still delivers. He still calms storms. We live in a world full of storms. And it says in a couple verses down, which we already read, that Jesus rebukes the wind and the waves. And it's funny, that word rebuke, it's the same word that is used in Mark 1 to describe Jesus rebuking a demon. It's the same word used in Luke 4 to describe Jesus rebuking a fever on Simon Peter's mother-in-law. What am I saying with that? What we see in the Gospels, what we see in the story of the Bible, is that there is a world that is out of control. A world that is in the hands of dark powers that bring chaos and decay. Paul says in Romans that all of creation is in bondage to decay, that this world is not the way God made it. This world is not the way that God intended it to be. That there are powers that bring storms, that bring fevers, that bring demons. And there's something that's not quite right about the world that God made, that God didn't make it this way. And yet there's a world that fundamentally has been flawed and corrupted from the good world that God made it to be. And the beauty of the gospel is that in Jesus Christ, that God has come to be the answer to the out-of-control powers of this world. That God has come to be the answer to the brokenness and the decay and the darkness that's all around us. That for even those who try their best to live the right way, do the right things, there's still things that happen that are beyond us. And yet in Jesus Christ, a solution has come. That in Jesus Christ, someone greater, someone stronger, someone more powerful and more good has come to put the world right. Jesus has authority. It says in verse 38, if I could reread verse 38 to you, it says, Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. So they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to die?" It's funny, these guys, they had been with Jesus for a while now. We don't know how long, but they're not brand new. They've seen Jesus heal the sick. They've seen him drive out demons. They've heard Jesus Christ call them by name and say, "Follow me." And what happens is 3 seconds into a storm, he doesn't care about us. And it's funny how you and I can have a history, right? We sang this morning, "All my life you have been faithful." And we sing that with a shout of joy when things are going well. And the second a storm comes, he's never cared about me. And the second a storm comes, did he ever really love me? Does he really hear any of my prayers? Has he ever really been for me at all? And the enemy comes with these lies to sow doubt and fear, and we question the heart of God. We question the character of God. But you see, they already forgot that a few minutes earlier, he said, "Let's go to the other side." And I want you to know this morning, if Jesus said, "You're going to the other side," guess what? You're going to the other side. He doesn't warn us about the storm because he knows we'll chicken out. But you need to know this morning that whatever weather comes that's outside of your control, there's someone in the boat with you who has authority over the wind and the waves. He never promised you wouldn't go through a storm, but what he did promise is that he'd always be with you. He did promise that he'd always be right there by your side. And I want you to know this morning, whatever moment that you are in, maybe it's a diagnosis from the doctor and there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe it's bad news at work. Maybe it's a spouse who cheated on you. Maybe your world is falling apart. I want you to know there's someone with you in the boat today. And he says you're going to the other side. We're so quick to doubt his heart. We're so quick to doubt his character. And I want to remind you this morning of all the answers to prayer God's already given you. Listen, if you got breath in your lungs, it's a good day. There are people, and I talk to them, who aren't here this morning because of health challenges in their body. They can't even get out of bed in the mornings. If you have a spouse that loves you, if you have a couple friends in your life, if you have a stable job, thank God for it. And what happens is we're so quick in the storm that it consumes us. It consumes all of our focus. And we go into this fear and anxiety mode and it just eats away at us. And do you even care? Do you even notice? Do you even see me right now? It says in 39, he got up, rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Silence, be still." The wind ceased and there was a great calm, and he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" You know, the reality is for many of us that even though on the surface, you know, maybe you have a moment where you open up to a friend about a fear and anxiety, I would actually propose to you this morning that for most of us, those little moments where people see us struggle are actually just the tip of the iceberg. And under the surface, we all live with this low-grade anxiety. We all live with this fear that things are out of our control. We live with this sense that things are not safe, that we're not going to be okay, that our story is not going to have a good ending. And so we're anxious about our health. We're anxious about our finances. We're anxious about this nation and where it's headed. And we just live with this fear on us all the time. Did you know the most repeated command in the Bible is don't be afraid? Why? Because that's the one we need the most. Don't be afraid. See, here's the truth, church. You worship what you fear. If you fear the storm, guess what that says about your theology? It says that the storm has the ultimate say over my life and my story. Now, nobody says that. But at its core, fear is idol worship. At its core, fear is exalting something else above the Lord. And so sometimes in Scripture, fear is gently encouraged. And sometimes in Scripture, like in this story, Jesus rebukes them. He says, you don't understand. You're exalting the storm above me. You believe the storm has more power than I do. And I want to remind you this morning that if you just fix your eyes on Him, faith will rise up all by itself. And you have to hear this morning. I'm not saying stick your head in the sand. I'm not saying pretend like the storm isn't real. That's not helpful. I'm not saying be just a naive optimist and everything will be chill, everything will be fine. I'm saying fix your eyes on the Son of God. And when you see Him, you realize that storm isn't so big anymore. That storm isn't so powerful anymore because there's someone greater with authority over the wind and the waves. And His name is Jesus Christ. Hear me, hear what I'm saying this morning, church. Sometimes we pastors, we make faith like this thing that you gotta turn on. You gotta work it up. You gotta manufacture this kind of faith. And I want to tell you this morning, if you just see Him, faith will rise up all by itself. Let me put it to you like this. If I say I have a lot of faith in Nate, it's not because I'm a great person or I'm a great friend. It's because he's walked with me through some stuff. It's because I've seen his faithfulness. So me having a lot of faith in Nate isn't about me, it's about Nate. And in the same way, when you have a lot of faith in God, great faith in God is not reserved for super spiritual Christians who are probably Jesus' second cousin and never sinned a day in their life. Great faith actually has nothing to do with you. It's that when you've seen what He's done again and again and again, faith begins to rise up on the inside of us. And when we don't have faith, what it's really saying is, I don't think you can get me out of this. I don't think you're stronger than the storm. Be not afraid. Verse 41. Then they were terrified and asked one another, who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey Him? This is the funniest part of the whole story. They go from being terrified of the storm to being terrified of Jesus. It's this hilarious moment when they're like, who is that guy that's in our boat? And you actually see this multiple times in the Gospels. The very next story, when they land on the other side of the shore, there's a guy who's possessed by a legion of demons, thousands of demons. This guy's so insane that they tried to put chains on him to bind him, and the demons gave this guy such supernatural strength, he broke the chains. And it says he lived naked in a cemetery and cut himself. That's a dark story. The people of the town were terrified. And it's hilarious in Mark 5, next chapter. It says that after Jesus cast out the demon, the town saw the guy sitting there in his right mind, and they were afraid, and they asked Jesus to leave their town. Why? The only thing scarier than a guy who lives in a cemetery naked with a legion of demons is when somebody stronger than him shows up to your town. That's terrifying. It says the women who went to the tomb on Sunday morning, the third day after his death. It says they went to the tomb to anoint his body. And an angel appears and says, what? He's not here. He's risen. And it says the women grew afraid. You know why that's scary? The only thing scarier than your Messiah dying is your Messiah coming back to life again. And we hear these stories and it's like, then he rose again, then he calmed the storm, then he cast out a legion of demons. And I want you to know this morning, there is someone in your boat with you that is way stronger than you imagine. There is someone in your boat with you who's more powerful than you could ever conceive. And I want you to have a moment this morning where you're not playing church, you're not playing games with God, that you're not just dabbling a little bit here and there, trying to be a good person. The Lord of the wind and the waves is in your boat with you. And that changes everything. It changes everything in your life. We want to come to church, dress nice, look nice, try to be a decent person. And all along you have to see he's more than just a nice teacher. He's God in flesh. C.S. Lewis has this quote in his book on miracles. He said this, he said, you've had a shock when the line pulls at your hand or when something breathes beside you in the darkness. It's always shocking to meet life where we thought we were alone. Look out, we cry, it's alive. An impersonal God, well and good. A subjective God of beauty, truth, and goodness inside our own heads, better still. A formless life force surging through us. A vast power which we can tap. That's best of all. But God himself, alive, pulling at the other end of the cord, perhaps approaching at an infinite speed, the hunter, the king, the husband, that is quite another matter. There comes a moment when the children who have been playing at burglars hush suddenly. Was that a real footstep in the hall? There comes a moment when people who've been dabbling in religion suddenly draw back, supposing we really found him. We never meant it to come to that. Worse still, supposing he had found us. There comes a point where people who've just been playing religion draw back. That there comes a point where you realize that he's real, that he's alive, that he is who he says he is, that he's God, and that he still has authority over the wind and the waves. And I hope you have an encounter this morning where you look around and realize, oh my goodness, who is this in the boat with me? Church, listen, he's not an app on your phone that you open when you need it and close it when you don't need it. He's not a nice little trinket to carry around in your pocket to make your life a little bit better from time to time. He is God and he's alive. And he's in your boat with you. And there comes this holy fear, not that you're scared he's going to hurt you, because he loves you. But there's this awe that like, oh my goodness, he's here, he's alive, he is who he says he is. And they go from being afraid of the storm to, oh my goodness, who is this? Who is this? Hear me this morning, church, he's real. He's the Son of God. See, too many of us, our gospel stops at Good Friday. And thank God for Good Friday. But I want you to know this morning, that tomb is empty. And on the third day, he rose again. And you and I do not serve a dead Christ, but a risen Christ and an ascended Christ who is enthroned over all things in glory now and forevermore. He reigns. We serve a living Christ. We serve a Christ who has authority over the wind and the waves. want to close here with the final verse from the book of Revelation. Revelation 21:1 says this, "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more." Kind of a weird verse, right? You see, in the Bible, the sea, it represents this dark, untamed, uncontrollable chaos. You know, today, if you go out on the water, you know, maybe you're on a ferry or a cruise ship, you barely feel the water, right? But you see, in the ancient world, I mean, to be on a wooden boat, wooden nails out there, and the storm's just raging, that's terrifying. And all throughout the Bible, we see this pattern, this theme, that in Genesis 1, it says that over the formless, watery void, God brought the land. The waters represent this emptiness, this void, this chaos. And into that void, God brought life and stability and land and a good creation. We see in the story of Noah that though the world had fallen into sin, God releases the waters to purge and purify the world. We see in the Moses story, Israelites, they're slaves in Egypt. And what happens? The sea parts. They come through these waters that were about to kill them, to drown them. They come through the waters of death and out the other side. See it in the Jonah story. Jonah's in a boat sleeping in a storm, except this one's his fault. So they chuck him overboard. He thinks he's going to die. And of course, the great fish swallows him up for 3 days. What's the point of the story? Out of the waters of death, there's grace, there's new life. The baptism of Jesus, right? Jesus said this represents my death. And so when you're baptized, you go down and you come up. In that same picture, you're coming up out of the waters of death into new life. And we see it here in this story. And Cindy read the psalm. That God's the one who stills the wind and the waves. Now, what am I saying with all of that? When we get to Revelation, this is the end of the story. New heavens, new earth. There's no more death, crying, pain. Those are former things that'll pass away. And the sea is no more. Now, does that mean there's no literal ocean in the new heavens and new earth? I hope not. I love the water. I got to make up that jet ski story to my mom one day. But you see, Revelation is symbolism. And what it's saying is that a day is coming when the out of control chaos, the untamable storms will one day be done away with. Because in this age, you will have storms. In this age, there will be things that are outside of our control. There will be things that will be beyond our capacity, and they will cause mourning and crying and death and pain. But Revelation tells us that a day is coming when there will be no more waves, when there will be no more storms, because Jesus Christ will be Lord, and he will reign over all things in heaven and on earth, and the sea will be no more. That day's coming. And in that day, in the kingdom of God, all tears will be wiped away. The waves will fully, finally, and forever be stilled.